for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumine, beloved divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to this video update with me here today. I have two special guests in the video today. First one is this beautiful violet amethyst called Veracruz amethyst. I don't know where it's from. And this one is called Faden quartz. And they're actually both twins. They're twin crystals. And how I connect to them is this one is my feminine self, which is the white pillar ray, you know, the white ray consciousness. And this one is the masculine self of mine. It's the masculine beloved. And it's this beautiful violet pillar. And I've always had this very same colors of my rays as the feminine and then the masculine. So I actually got these two crystals as a gift today. Today is a special day. And I met this most amazing person today, which I've mentioned recently in most of my videos, and her work, to introduce it to all those of you as well who are interested in going really, really deep. Because what I find in the almost like synastry in the analogy of our work is that we both go very deep in our own ways. So her name is Susan Ashley, and she was traveling through Slovenia, and it's my country as of yet. It's not mine, but it's where I'm located and where my pillar self resides. And it's been amazing. It's been just a short visit, and it's been really beautiful. So I'm really grateful and thankful to Susan for giving me these crystals because they have brought me a special kind of confirmation and sort of like a twinning nature of this path, which is getting for me very deep, very anchored and very ancient. So this month on Patreon, I've actually been talking about the seals of creation. I've started talking about the seals of creation. There is a second transmission coming. This is a part of the wholesome transmission that I was talking about as the gift of life, as the Divine Mother speaking her pure truth out in the way all creation is unfolding, the way creation comes about, and we as divine children of this creation, as we're activating these ancient seals and templates yet again. So this is what I'm talking about this month. I don't know yet for next month, because as you know, I had a lot of work at this time, and it was very problematic for me to do it all. At the same time, I was doing tremendous inner healing and the nervous system alignment, because I was terribly abused in the location where I was living in this space. And because it was getting so difficult, we were trying to move for a very long time, as you well know, and we had this event now, the stage event, which prevented a lot of us from moving forward much earlier, you know, so it all got super prolonged and extended. But during this time, we're working very intensely to move as well. And as you know, relocations are difficult things. And we have a lot of stuff, and I have a lot of crystal stones, artwork, oracle cards. You know, I have a tremendous collection of stuff, which is always difficult because we're like hamsters, right? We're carrying a lot of these things. So it will be a little challenging. And I still have in mind to create this course for everyone about the true meaning and purpose behind the narrative of artificial intelligence, how to reach and achieve divine immunity. So that's the next thing coming up. I really hope soon, and if I can manage to do it this time, I'm going to do after the move. I don't yet know, because it's all kind of in the blur. We're very much in the thick of it right now. Yesterday, to be honest, was such a tremendously difficult day that, you know, I've had many difficult days, but this was one of the most difficult days. And I came to the verge of almost like you could call a breakdown, you know, and I just had enough. And I went on top of this cliff that I have here just after this like shower of these events, you know, like an avalanche of these weird things and people and bombardment with heavy stuff. And it's just been too much, you know, because I am always have been a pure being, and then so much being lashed out at the same time, you know, coming from the environment, your own place of residence, the people, you know, and even the people who, you know, when you do this work, you kind of, you know, you're doing this work with a lot of love and respect. And when people then eventually turn and start doing their own things, it's difficult, you know, because the respect is not shared and there's no appreciation and validation there. So it gets really difficult because, you know, myself, I'm very much the challenger. I like to challenge the old narratives and that which has simply surpassed its time. And so in the thick of it yesterday, I just ran there on top of this hill. I have to warn you, we have ants here again today, and they're red ones, which are even more lethal, but I'm used to them, so I hope you are as well by watching enough of my videos. So what took place is I was just standing there in the top of this cliff, and I was there and I was yelling out like really loudly because, you know, many of you know me as just sharing this, like, you know, people often see me as this friendly go-to person, this organic communicator, and that's not all I am, okay? So many things, just like the goddess has 3 different aspects, right? It's this fierce crone aspect, it's the mother aspect, and it's the child aspect. And so when I'm in this fierce mode, you know, my energy is really strong and sometimes it can scare people. And when people have a certain idea of what love is and they expect it to come from only one side or one face of the goddess, they're going to be very much disappointed when you're actually utilizing that other narrative of the goddess, because simply it is the directive of life to come through in that natural, authentic way. And that's why in my life I've always been a free person. I don't defend myself, I don't explain myself to anyone, and I most definitely do not need to validate myself in any certain way. So, you know, yesterday was really so intense, and I was making this strong, like, call out about experiencing this divine state of mercy, because it's in the last thick of it, it's just been so intense. And what happened, I have to share this with you because it was simply something that never happened to me before. After all that yelling and screaming, and I was in that fierce goddess mode, just goddess wanting to be free and finally able to be liberated in this life without all the BS, you know. And it's not just like the opposition coming from people, it's basically the collective energies, this matrix resistance. It's been on and on in my life because it's just trying to break free from that. So I'm going to share what came up for me during the Patreon transmission, because it was about you know, there were 2 trinities of life, you know, the life itself, and then we, those of us who are born of this life. I'll go further, but here I want to say it was tremendously intense when I'm in this energy, in this commanding presence energy, when you're liberating energies, you know, when you sit down and it's like you're all shaking because the current of energy, this thrust is so intense. And I was charged there, sitting, and when it was time for me to leave and go back home, I sat and I put my things back, and eventually I noticed I was sitting on this bug, on this beetle. And I look at it, and it was the kind of miraculous, magical, most mystical being that I've ever seen, because of its colors, its shape, like everything. It didn't feel of this earth, because I've been outdoors most of my life, even as a small child and leading into my adult years now. And it's like I've never seen one like this. It was copper gold with rainbow spectacles inside. It was this, you know, this tiny little sparkles of light everywhere, like liquid diamonds. And the shape was like almost like figure 8. And I'm staring at it like, you are not real. This is so surreal. I was just staring at it, and the next idea I get is like, oh, make a picture of it. Like, I literally have to have proof, at least for Instagram. And I was so excited. And I tried to put it to, and I kept having the beetle climb on my hand. And each time I tried to, you know, reach for the camera, the beetle already fell off. He was so super fast. I've made so many pictures of beetles and animals and insects and everything in my life, but this little buddy did not want to be photographed. Like, he kept hiding under the leaves, and eventually I just quit and said, fine. And then I just, okay, I'm just going to find you, at least show yourself for the very last time. And I'm looking at it. He was gone. He literally went into some underground cave, or he was interdimensional, or he just manifested out of thin air, because literally this was the most beautiful beetle I've ever seen. It was amazing. I have to go to a beetle museum to see if they have any of these. But I really took that as a message, because I was sitting on it. It's like sitting on gold. So once you do this intense, immense liberation work. And then I stood up afterwards. I was literally sitting on it. It's like, where did you come from? He was underneath me the whole time, I guess, I'm assuming. And this was like a gift. It was a message in itself, right? So the work was really intense. And then in the evening, I got this message I got this card actually twice, like look for a sign. And it's this, Angel Answers Oracle, and you have this lightning rod in the image. And we go out in the morning, I go out to walk on the sand. It's like, what's the sign? I didn't even think about it anymore, right? It was all yesterday. And then suddenly, out of almost clear skies, it wasn't the typical kind of, storm weather. We didn't even have any storms here this year, which is weird for this time of the year. And eventually, there's two thunders, one after the other. And like, what the heck is going on? And then I really felt like something moving. And so just yesterday, after this, again, tremendous amount of the debris, thickness of obstruction leaving, I came home and there was this reading title. Sometimes because I don't have much time to watch videos, I like to just browse through them, or maybe I have a look for 5-10 minutes and then I can't because I have so much piled up in my own life now. And it's just been this title saying an obstruction has been cleared. And it was such an intense confirmation, right? Remember last week and that urgent message I shared with you how much piles and piles of this density were removed. And it's just like these portals of the dark are now also at the same time in conjunction with what we sometimes call the earthquakes, or the bombing that's also happening that sometimes we mistaken for earthquakes. But it's like a tremendous release of energy is happening each time. So it's all kind of in conjunction. And usually at those times, people, especially people who have dark influences themselves or demonic influences, they're going to act out crazily on these days. That's why usually in my own place of residence, when these days happen, I don't have a moment of silence. It's super horrendous. And those of us who are sensitive beings, noise is our worst enemy. That's why the darkness uses tremendous resounding frequency, very low frequency, to attack us and to debilitate us and to make us feel despair. So each time I have this, and then there's the people coming that just piles up. And yesterday I couldn't. When they always say, well, if you're a master, you're going to transcend this, and you're going to be like this and all aligned, you're never going to lose it. You know what? That's the old way. That's, again, that masculine dogmatic principle. You have to be in a certain way, and then you're spiritual. You know how many people have been doing this, either channeling work or whatever kind of work, and they haven't even lived their own personal lives in this integrity? So many. Okay? So the goddess and its raw power, and we're talking in these videos now about the unleashing of this feminine principle and the teachings it has to share, and its own immaculate construction, creation of life that she wants to rebuild again, because her queendom was times and times over suppressed, over dominated by this enslavement and manipulation of control forces and the hijack masculine energy. I'm not saying the divine masculine energy is beautiful, but even the spiritual circles have been infiltrated with this dogmatic masculine spiritual teachings that are very archetypal in a construction kind of manner. It's like you have to be this way, you have to perform this way, you have to step up in a certain way. And even through that spiritual indoctrination, you can lose your sense of liberty and liberation, right? So there's a lot of these things happening that we don't see. That people, even though they think they're being liberated through spirituality, a lot of times this is really not the case, because the feminine force is the liberation. So I see this, even these crystals, that's why I brought them to the video today. Well, they're going to be part of my daily life now, but it's like, this is that masculine, right? And we often say, well, it's the violet flame, and it's that pillar, right? And look at this, the masculine, if you're looking at as the masculine beloved, it's vertical. And then look, that's how they placed this crystal. They didn't place it like this on the chain. They did it like this. So I'm seeing this as the horizontal expression of life, which is the feminine. So when the feminine force, well, the masculine holds the pillar for her safety and vigilance, right? The feminine can start spreading out into the world. So it was interesting because just yesterday, I finally managed to physically, not just in spirit, join the meditation work that Susan Ashley provides on her page. And right now you have her link to her channel on my own channel. within the recommended channels playlist, right? So you can find that there. And I joined in for the first time because before I just had my own work, or I couldn't, or you know, she wasn't yet sharing it live on YouTube, and I don't have Facebook, and it was all these kind of strange coincidences and synchronicities. So that last day I really felt pulled, because that was exactly the date. It was yesterday, that intense day. And I joined, and what I felt that towards the end of the meditation, because she has this procedure, the way she does it, it's her own creation. And towards the end, I felt like I went into my own thing, and I entered into this state, which I can only call, I called it like the nano spin, because you're usually, when you spin, you start like this, and the feminine is counterclockwise, and the masculine goes like, you know, clockwise, and then eventually sometimes you start resounding with both spins. But when this happens, this nano spin, it's like a very fast spin that you basically feel only at the top of your head. So the rest of your body is kind of like more in stillness. But here you feel like this intense pulsating, and it gets faster and faster. So I call it the nano spin. I don't know why. The words just came this way. And I entered into this space, and when enough of spin frequency was created, all of a sudden I felt this thrust of life force moving out, and I felt it like traveling through a tunnel. And it's again that, you see, that horizontal perspective, like she wants to spread herself. So she's going like, you know, in the circle. That's also how the pulsar is. The pulsar is based on masculine holding that space and the pillar, and then the feminine, and then this powerful thrust field, like through the light field, the thrust is created. And I know this is again advanced for some people to understand, and I do this advanced work, but the reason why I'm sharing this is to have a little bit of the perspective, the things that are happening as a result of me doing this work. So it's not just behind the scenes, you know, I'm not, never was, never will be a channeler, because I always say to people that channeling has become like animals, right? An endangered species in a way, because in those old good days, like 80s, 90s, when people entered into channeling, it was all seen as very much a sacred ritual. Now everyone just says, oh, I want to channel these beings, and they enter into a channel and they say, I'm channeling these beings. Well, through my own experience, right, of witnessing how the channels of light can be hijacked, and how basically the darkness controls these channels by building holograms of light around it. So you might think, oh, that's basically of the light, because they know how to work with light holograms, right? Doesn't mean their mission, their orientation, their purpose is of the light. You see, that's the difference. That is why I always tell people, don't just fall for something because it has a spiritual component or connotation to it. Go beyond it. You have to really become vigilant. You have to become fierce. And there is no other way but doing this life force mastery work and self-liberation work, right? So a part of that channeling, the way and how it can be dangerous to people, especially people who are just starting to wake up, is they become very susceptible to information automatically. So they're automatically taking it in. And because most of the people who are channelers, and again, this is not personal attack or judgment over anyone, I'm saying in general as a principle, this is what's happening on this planet, right? It's like the light, even if it comes in, right, it starts to flow through these filters and these holograms built around, and that's how they hijack the channels of light. Recently someone asked me a question about more of this, right, how the false light comes into being. So I was shown that what the dark beings do, they actually hijack the channels in this way. So they build holograms around certain points that are important conjunction points. It's like timelines, and when they merge, right, there's instead of that light coming through directly, there's a certain dispersion, and it kind of creates its own frequency, but it's not in its original immaculate form anymore. So channeling, for a lot of people who, not just that they themselves haven't done the true integration work, which takes years often, you know, but also because in general, because of the whole matrix of the bubble field, these channels at the collective have been hijacked. So even when I started awakening, they always like warned me against channeling. That's why even if I read channel material, I always take just what really sinks in with me, and I leave the rest. But I never watch channelers who channel directly. So in my own way, the way I receive is through life force currents or impulses of life force. That is why I will have days when I'm empty, or what I like to call flat as a board. Like I get nothing, I'm flat. And this is usually when the body is purging again to be prepared for the new level. And then there's a new taken, and then again purging and a new taken. But what most channelers do, they can always enter this channel, right? Whatever they, it's like the trigger point, or they have workshops because they have a workshop at that time, place. This is, when the channeling comes true. And for the most part, it's not as organic as it's, supposed to be if these channels were not hijacked. There's very few people who actually channel in this direct way, which means that the beingness they channel comes from their own oversoul complex, which is rare. Usually people channel groups of beings who they become representatives for. Somehow they make a cosmic, like a light association with. But even then, there is no guarantee that in this human body, where we're taking up the space within this human form, that there will be no obstruction. And when you go to channeling or you listen to someone channel, you might witness the responses coming through sometimes as, there's going to be like 60% good, and then something that will be totally off. Even if it's just 10% off, it's not the truth. Because these infiltration points have been happening for eons, and people don't know that because they don't see them, because they haven't expanded their awareness enough. And this is a more galactic consciousness work that you don't even get to embody without doing a very intense work in the body, how light enters through the channels in your body and changes basically your system of receptivity. It changes your channels, it changes your chemistry, right? Chemical components, and what they used to call in the biblical verses or different scriptures, like the anointment and this oils, right? The Indian scriptures talked about sacred oil that's produced, right, as the cultivation of life force. But basically what's happening now, this is not just an inner cultivation, but also galactically we're being triggered, and the sun is bringing these codes of deliverance and new information. So when sun is being blocked, we already know what's happening, right? We're being just witnessing and experiencing another level of obstruction. And because obstruction has been just building up, like it's been building up, we've been witnessing a reality is getting more distorted, more distorted. So for me, when I go to certain spiritual books, I always go for the old ones from 80s and 90s. They really have good stuff in there. If anyone always comes up to me like, look, have you read this new book? I'm like, no, not interested. I'm sorry. Really not. Very rarely. If it's like spirit calling you out. But I don't do that kind of work because I myself have a work that hasn't been brought to the planet before, because it's new. And people who are not a part of this, obviously they have their own thing. They don't know, right? So they would make an assumption based on according to what they perceive this reality to be. So this distortion and this infiltration has been happening for eons of time, and it's on all levels, as you know, on all levels of our life. So when we talk about, let's now mention the words false prophets. I've talked about this. I remember one of my first videos back in 2010 or 2011 when I started doing the videos was about false prophets or false light. And it was just me starting up. I wasn't obviously embodying the consciousness of my true spirit self as I do now, when Aurea really lives in me and we're one, and it's just organic. I don't need to channel anything. I'm just in this space. So embodiment is the most organic level of what the goddess wants from us. She wants all of us to embody our spirits. She doesn't want us to constantly be dependent upon the information, which is another second problem of channelings, because people often become dependent upon that resource as becoming their only source of information. At the end, you don't even know what the messenger is about. You become so fixed on that content coming in, you forget about the messenger. And a lot of these messengers are trying to get out there with a specific agenda. Sometimes it's even materialistic, or getting their products out, selling their work, selling their courses at super high prices, and then they just withdraw and leave people out on dry because they're not really selflessly serving with the cosmic Christ consciousness. And that's the difference. There's a lot of people who sometimes they don't even know what they're doing. They think they're doing good, but they're not at the level of knowing what kind of an immense responsibility this work is. Nowadays, anyone can call themselves a published author or a channeler. And I know people would say, well, why am I so critical? I'm not critical. I'm simply exposing things. I'm challenging the narratives that we haven't, as a collective humanity, hasn't been able to penetrate through. And it's becoming more obstructive for the people. And now we have so much darkness because of this blindfolded nature. So it's, as I've always told you, it's not just the normal people, like the normal folks who don't know anything about awakening and what's happening on our planet, but it's also the so-called spiritual people. Because they are not moving forward because they're not working on embodying their consciousness. They're working on pursuing information, and it's an endless, infinite journey that you're always going to end up chasing your tail. So I always see these people who come up and they're these authoritarian speakers that everyone gives power to because they're famous or well known and well spoken. A lot of these people, like I said before, they're very well outspoken, but doesn't mean they're enlightened beings. You really have to watch out whether they're giving information, especially when they're passing it on from something they've learned or read, or they have informative speakers or agents, or what are they called? You know, when these informers come out, supposedly sharing, like whistleblowers also, these people, right? They always pass on more information, and you don't know how many times this was filtered before it got to you actually listening to that and plugging into it and just affirming. The problem with most of these mass teachings is that people are, I've seen this in a dream space once, they've shown me, it's like people giving the mass consent like this. They show me this guru figure who's a very well-known speaker, but they were actually programmed, right? They're very famous, and I don't go into names. It's not the issue here. It's not the main thing, but it's about what was shown to me, right? So it's like people were in compliance because they literally programmed their voice to come out in a certain way, and people are doing like, yes, giving them their consent. So when we say the words false prophets, it's not just our politicians and the mass media and people who've been placed in these position spaces and, you know, stools. We give them the sense of, oh, you know, admiration at a certain point, and then we wake up. It's not just them, and it's not just religious personas. It's many people in the spiritual circles as well. Many, many. And it's people who are presenting narratives that do good, you know, and people would say, oh, they're actually someone who is, let's say, an environmentalist spokesperson, a very young person. You know, I've recently witnessed this video from someone who's going into this Christian perspective, but it's very well prepared. The study this man does, it's amazing. Like, he's so into it, and he's really going deep into like revealing these things that most people don't even know, and it has nothing to do with Christianism as well. It's just, you know, at all. It's just, look at this. Just go and look deeper. Do your own research, and most people don't do their own inner research. They just go for a few sources and make a comparison. Well, look at these three people talking about the same thing, so it must be true, right? It's not enough. It's not enough, right? No, not for where we are now. Not as those of you who really want to be conscious masters of yourself, your life force, and what you're creating in this world, in this life, for yourself and the world, right? Humanity and the planet, because they're one. Humanity is one with the planet. So he was really bringing up this. And I never seen this child, right, this environmentalist speak before. But I said, okay, I'm going to give it a go, and I'm watching. And the way she spoke was like, it felt acted out. Because when you go with the third eye and when you listen to with your heart, you will feel. And then you will see how many narratives are represented, how many of the figures that are placed there in these positions that will tell people, oh, this is wrong, right? And we're on your side, supposedly, but they're not. So what they're actually doing, and a lot of us who are exposing this, what they're doing is they're placing these people who are false prophets, not just in these very obvious aspects of life that once you call yourself awake, you easily recognize, but these are more distinctively operational tactics that you really have to go even deeper for if you want to master yourself even more. So they would kind of, you know, sometimes people call that the controlled opposition. So they're kind of for the people and for the causes that we perceive they're good, but they have a limitation, they have an agenda behind it, and we don't see. So what this man presented through his teaching is how they want to present this environmentalist problem as if it's people's fault. And I kept telling this people for years, like, it's not the people's fault. They try to make people feel guilt and shame and blame for our destruction of the environment, but people did not destroy the environment. They did. You know, the rulers, the main governors, have put these things in motion. They have created not just a lifestyle, but they've created a certain way that life works on this planet that benefits them and the big companies and all that. But they took care of everything. They took care also of these counterpositions, so they would also be covered. So when the people start to wake, they would also have these seats taken by them, and people would start following these figures and say, well, that must be done because obviously this goes for the environment. And what this man has presented was, he was saying, yes, for the environment, but not at the cost of human freedom. So that's what they're trying to do now. They're using a child. Why? Because when you use a child, you manipulate the people. If a child is doing like this in front of a camera, right? Oh, you've taken away my dreams and things like that, right? And they're acting it out. People will feel this sense of guilt. And they're going to say eventually, when the time comes, I'm willing to give my freedom if that will be at the expense of planetary cleanup. Let me tell you, none of these people who are doing that will ever clean up the planet, because they are the ones who caused the problem. None of these vaccines or whatever they're presenting will cure the diseases and the problems, because they were also created by them. That's what they're doing. So you have to be really watchful what you take in as the good. And it's the same with spirituality. At the same time, we've been studying now a lot. What they're doing is they're trying to close up every single independent environmental company, well, you know, agenda here. The government is trying to take over everything, which is, it's intense, right? So it's in every circle, and they want these placed in positions. I'm not saying all channelers are like that, or I'm just saying we have to be really discerning, because a lot of these people are also false prophets. And a false prophet means you're not working for the betterment of the whole. It means you have an agenda behind it. Even if it's just a small agenda, it's still an agenda. You might say, well, but no. If it's 10% corrupt, even if it's just 1% corrupt, it's corrupt. It ruins the whole and negates the whole 99% of what you're claiming to be the light. It sucks, but it's how it is. So what they're doing, right, they're manipulating people so they would feel guilt, and when the time comes and they would say, look, we've destroyed the planet, and the only solution is you give us the command to take over, and we're going to create this martial law and this and that and total control, and you're going to move in tiny little compartment buildings, right, Agenda 21, and we're going to, you know, move you in a certain way. You're going to move away from rural environments because you're just ruining them. And so these people, right, they first started. And let me tell you, those who know the whole occult thing and cult passed on from generation to the generation, a lot of these children, you know, like the owner of FB, right? I'm not going to say the whole name because, you know, YouTube's thing and censorship. These are placed. They're all within their families. They give them different names, change a lot of things, and they steal intellectual work and property from other people. And we would never figure, right? We think, or if it's a child fighting for this, you know, how would a child even come to such a strong position? With the current state of opposition, think straight, right? And we have to really be, really be vigilant at this time. This is not about blaming anyone. This is not calling out anyone, anything. But we have to see beyond what's being presented. And there was a lot of politicians that I've witnessed once that they were doing like this, you know, to this spokesperson, and they're literally advertising her everywhere. And it's like, they wouldn't allow this, right? They don't allow people who really want to change what's happening from, you know, from the perspective of freedom. And the problem is when it's still within control and opposition, you have to see it's not done from the heart. It's done from control. And it's being sold as a narrative of, yeah, you know, and this disease happens, and it's all in conjunction. So this guy exposed this, and he was showing an interview with this person and being interviewed by a major, you know, MSM. And they were all very serious about it, right? How this is all connected, and Corona and environmentalism and all that. So it's just basically one same thing, but you have to see through it. So when a point comes, and already they're doing this thing now, you can't swim, right, at the beaches. They're bleaching the beaches and things like that. It's horrendous. And go watch the latest channeling from Susan and her latest video meditations, because she talks about vaccinations and, you know, their agendas and what's still coming up as the next follow-up event, because it's not over. And it's time for people to really start seeing the bigger picture. And a lot of people who say we're spiritual and we're doing the work and it's always just based on the light, they're not going to see. Because you have to learn how the dark works. You have to see their ways. You have to see beyond them. And that's how you start creating within the Trinity of life, right? It's the only way to move through the darkness, that you become the Christ. The Christ in consciousness, the Christ in body. The Christ lives in your heart. So one other thing is, you know, look at the person. I've told you that before. Whoever is speaking, don't go for the first thing. Oh, look, it's a child. Oh, they must be agenda free because they're a child. Are you really serious that we always go for the first thing that's being sold to us? You have to tune into the energy. When I tuned into energy, it was all full of these evil looks, like evil eye. A person who's within love and they share the truth, no matter what the topic is, they share it within love. And the only way we're really going to create conscious solutions and new technologies and all of that is when we break through the darkness, right? This is also what the channeling spoke of. And I've been teaching that for years now. It's like you can't find solution if you don't go through the problem. You have to go through the narrative of darkness. You have to move through sometimes even the most horrendous oppression. That's what I've been doing for the past few years. It's been tremendously difficult, but it was the only way for me to resurrect those aspects, to bring a higher aspect of life through my physical form, right? And I get really passionate about it, as you know, but I'm heart-centered within it. I do this out of love because my desire is for people to understand that the solutions come when the energy opens up, which was also in the latest Susan's channeling from Cassandra. So when enough people are bringing enough light quotient to any aspect of life, that liberates the energy. It creates like an opening. And those holograms of false light, and they literally, what these holograms do, they create ripples of deflection, so it's very difficult for people to see through, them, what they truly are. And we've been in compliance mode for such a long time, and the spiritual folks have always been saying, no, it's the non-awake people. Oh, no, it's the people who still follow religion. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. No, because they've taken care of everything, and all channels were hijacked in all areas of life. And religion and spirituality were always one of these aspects. And I think Susan talks about these as 5 families that are also connected. But these 5 aspects all deal with aspects of life, like economics, health and medicine, all these aspects, right? So I'm not going to go into that. Basically, you have to know how they work. You have to always tune into the energy of the individual, what they're emanating. If they're not emanating love, no matter what they say, might still have an agenda behind it, because people who are really, really integrated with an enlightened presence, when an enlightened being moves through them, I don't care if someone says they're a spiritual guru. Again, there's a lot of false personas put in these positions to make us think that because a name is given to them or self-chosen and self-proclaimed, now this is it. They must be the one who knows it all. That's been the most tremendous issue, why there wasn't a greater awakening, and now people are all wondering, why has it gotten so bad? It must be the non-awake people. No, it's all levels of an awakening, because souls are at different levels, right? Here in this planet, we have many souls, different levels, different stages of development and their own evolutionary process. So you have to know every unawake level that has an unawakened aspect influences the whole. Because it's all like layers of the onion, right? And we're liberating these aspects. And I myself have been liberating tremendous channels and portals of light within the light being perspective and narrative. And this is what I'm going to be talking about in the transmission, okay? So rolling up my sleeves now. Now I want to talk about the other topic, which is still in relation to this. I want to mention the word and talk a little bit about that renegade of the light. Because recently it's been talked about in one of the channels. I can't remember the name now, but there's this very famous person, and his book is called The Renegade, and there was this topic, does that mean they're working for the dark and all of this? So I wanted to bring a higher perspective of what this renegade aspect means, okay? I want to tie it back in with the whole starseed family and the whole project of working together as illumined beings. So let's start with a higher perspective, and then we're going to go into more details. When life was developing at different stations of life, as Spirit calls it, right? We know this is different constellations, and there's planetary stations providing life in all these different stages. Stages, right, of life. So, galactically speaking, each of these has a specific mastery to be attained at that, let's say, school of life. Okay, so within these fractions that we all are part of, and everything, all of these are one. When there were these teachings come naturally when there was life being experienced, right? The teaching was a natural result. Teaching wasn't, at the higher soul level, the teaching is not an instrumental thing. It's not constructual. Teaching is an organic thing that develops out of your own experience of life. So spirituality used to be based on the experience of life. Now we have spirituality becoming just one giant scripture. And you might have people making these 5-hour videos of presenting something, and then at the end of the watching that for 5 hours, you realize nothing was major was actually shared. It was like all wind up circle. It's like leading people, like pulling them at their noses, seriously. And people expect to get something, and all they get is like a flat landing. It's like, what the heck? And there's very few people who actually access this and go deep as I do and as Susan does. And these people are often, first, our channels have been hijacked on YouTube. That's why we need to travel through word of mouth. And we always ask you to share this, right? And these algorithms they can use, they hide our videos and materials. So, you know, you can hardly get new subscribers. When you are speaking for them and you're useful, they will unblock these, and you can get like 1,000 subscribers overnight. Okay, so that's one thing. And what I was talking about, right, is how these people like us, we often get ridiculed and criticized because we come across as critical, but we're not critical. We're opening the gates to the energy that is new, that hasn't been before. And this is the feminine principle. And we have enough of these all men, authoritarian, whether it's politics, religion, or it's spirituality, it's still the same. It's still always men acting out on the behalf of something that we see, oh, just because they're a man, they have authority, so they must know what they're speaking about. And just because someone is younger, oh, they haven't been experienced enough. You know what? You don't know. Maybe a 20-year-old has had a very difficult life because they've chosen that as a soul, and they've become so super fast, speedily integrated, and they're an amazing being, but no one takes them seriously. Like our children now, these crystal children, amazing teachers. They don't need all that programming and that bypassing, and you still need to learn that. Otherwise, Okay, so it's because these beings, and a lot of us are coming from direct high councils of light, which is the carry of knowledge, which is synthesized, because the high council means the organic compilation of the light quotient, the light encoding of all beings that are part of that. That's why 144 is a light quotient of the beings who are holding that space. Is not a number of entities, okay? Or beings like humans at all. So this is the purest form of the knowledge that can be translated. But like I said, because of these holograms, it's been hijacked, it's been filtered, so it's been very difficult to receive pure and take in pure information, especially with a spiritual component on this planet, especially since 2000 moving forward, right? So going back to this whole rebellion thing, going back, tracing it to the whole Luciferian, what was it called? Like his own rebellion, right? It was his rebellion against the path of the light. Because the path of the light is not just about light itself. The path of the light and the family of light is always anchored in group consciousness. The heart space, whether you know it or not, is already an anchor for group consciousness, because in your heart you connect to the heart of all hearts. In the mind, you don't. Your mind is a separate thing. It's like a calculator, right? It can provide good tasks and stuff, but it's still a calculator. So cosmically speaking, this first separation, which sometimes we refer to as the Luciferian rebellion, is that control position. That's where the control of position comes from, right? The light bearer, but also false light. And it's a narrative that wants to exist separately from source. It doesn't want to be part of source light. It wanted to have its own independence as being away from source light, and outgrew its power. And it got to the point of, this Luciferian whole agenda and rebellion got people who were sucked into this whole narrative so far, or as far, that people don't even know what their own selves are anymore. In one of the books from Barbara Hand-Clow, the channeling, like the essence of Lucifer was like, I don't even know who I am anymore, because I went so far straight off. I don't even remember. And it's like, why a lot of people who are now becoming addicted to these teachings are following that pursuit, because it's like, you don't work with your own light. You don't work with your own consciousness. And people get really upset if I tell them, don't send me these teachings because I have my own. They're always like, oh, who do you think you are? No one. I'm just myself. I have my own knowledge. I don't think anything of myself. But people get really offended, It's like, what the heck? What did I ever do to you? I'm just telling you, please, I have this. This is how I am. Please respect that, right? And it's like, this is that narrative that takes people away from their natural source light, which is always pulsating. And it's like, it's your own vortex. And just because someone in channeling might say, oh, we're talking about the vortex, doesn't mean that the person who's doing that channeling embodies what this is. That's why my sharing has always been, after I've embodied something, when I had the initiation and I passed it first, then I was able to share. And because my sharing is so organic, it doesn't come out as a teaching, right? It's not like something you can follow like in a linear structure. It comes and goes. It's like little bits and pieces here and there. So it's triggering you also to activate these multidimensional impulses and incoming streams of light coming in simultaneously, right? And so this narrative of rebellion caused a wave, and it created a ripple. So this ripple was felt in each of these star systems, right? So in each of these star systems, especially those who are very, let's say, younger in their development, and that means they've had less training, right? They weren't as strong in their light yet to carry it first themselves, because the light training for soul beings, for light beings, is always, you need to learn how to carry light first yourself. Then you need to carry it when you're in a group formation, and then you need to learn how to carry it out into the world. And this is what I'm doing, like holding the light at this worldly level, and to anchor that, and without any interference, bypassing all of that, and still know how to anchor it. And that's why I was doing this. I had this training. I mean, this was my training all my life, which was super difficult, but that's where I am. And a part of that vulnerability was that a lot of these souls actually deflected. They were kind of like tempted. They did not want to participate in the group. Remember, light family is not just information that feels spiritual. The family of light literally means, it represents beings who are working as one group body. They're working for the betterment of the whole. That is when you truly become initiated into light beingness. You're not going to be anymore an individual doing a work. Even when I have my work, but that work is performed within a greater group circle. And I always kind of am depending and interdepending upon them, or them, they as the group, right? And when I witnessed several people on this planet who were supposedly light workers, but they were very self-serving. And just recently, Susan and I discussed this, how people steal other people's work. Like they're trying to be spiritually proclaimed, but they're actually just copying other people's work. It doesn't come from them. It's not shared from their own stream of light. So what happens is you're going to get an individual who wants to be as a solitary spokesperson or persona, but actually they work for themselves. So tying it back to the star root family, it's within every facet, within every fraction of these, like all systems, they had their own renegades. Renegades are not just groups of beings. Later they developed as groups, but renegades were beings. First it became as a being. It starts as a consciousness, right? Who they wanted, like the vanity, right? This pride that we associate with the whole aspect of the archetype of the Lucifer. This vanity and pride is an idea that you are self-serving and you need to have a power. And within that, there's always control. And these beings kind of deflected from the whole family of light. And I've often told you how not all that call themselves star seeds are actually at the same time a part of the unified family of light, working for the betterment of the whole, in union of worlds and our cosmic ascension spiral of light. That's the real truth of life, not death and destruction and artificial intelligence, right? So these beings became independent beings, and a lot of them, because they no longer wanted to join the group, they were sent on lower dimensional planets to learn and to be humbled by life. So this, as you know, is a prism planet, and many of these beings, as a part of the higher, because they're all still connected to their oversoul, right? But a part of their learning was to come and be humbled here. That's why they would maybe have these recurring experiences. It's like life teaching them something, and they would want something, but it ends up being something else. So at the individual level, this is this renegade aspect and how it manifests. Then another aspect of the word renegade is also that there's been groups of renegades. So now on our planet we have spokespeople, or there's a spokesperson for every one of these renegade families. These renegades are all groups of beings who no longer work for the goddess or the plan of life or the divine plan. They work on themselves and their own agenda. And that's why I'm always telling you, it doesn't matter what the information is, how glittery it sounds. Feel the illumination of what's coming through. Feel if that being is truly passionate about the betterment and the freedom and liberty of all, or whether they're just passing on information or trying to be spiritual, trying to be famous. I'm not saying this to criticize, I'm saying this to show you that at a galactic level, this is how things are orchestrated. And many of these very famous beings are often the representatives for these groups of beings. So one of these channels literally recently mentioned how these reptilian beings want to come to the surface now, and they needed their spokesperson to prepare the people or the masses what they are, who they are, how they function in advance. So like people literally invite them into their consciousness, because you first have to invite this type of consciousness. And at the same time, they were kind of changing the environment, right, making it more aligned with their resonance, because they're literally fourth dimensional, and that's why they don't want the planet to go into fifth density state, right? They want to keep it and they want to take it over. There's many agendas, but what's happening on our planet is we can become too entrenched in one agenda. So these spokesperson, right, these renegades who work for these groups that are not serving at the family of light level, they might often use language which is very much like, oh yeah, it's all about the heart, it's all about the love, but their energy doesn't emanate that. Don't fall prey to words, my beloveds. Always go for the essence. What's really coming through? Is that person really bringing the narrative of the higher plan? Do they ever mention Christ, the word Christ? Do they ever mention Holy Spirit? And these words have nothing to do with religion or being a Christian. I'm not a religiously a Christian. I'm a Christ-born being. And many Christians are actually more awake than people who are in the New Age, because they're more in line with the whole sacredness of life. For many in the New Age, life has lost sacredness. It's all just become about this more information, codes, light codes, this and that. Well, many Christians still feel and see this reverence for life, and this reverence of what they call God, and what many of us call source, creator, it doesn't matter. But I see them, they're still carrying a lot of that, almost like using a little more noble approach. They still have their blind spots. Everyone does who's not fully illumined. But some beings are kind of like a little closer to come to that verge of really knowing what illumination is and become completely liberated. And what I've talked about in my recent Patreon is that a lot of people say it doesn't matter, you die, you go to spirit. No, spirit and body has always been connected, and what happens to our bodies does affect the spirit. And that's why many beings don't end up where we think they end up, right? Because of what's been done here. That is why the goddess, the narrative of purity of life, has been trying to liberate these aspects in the feminine principle, which is liberating the bodies. And I've literally been doing this work for the last 2 years, how to liberate the body. And it hasn't been informational at all. That's why there was a period, right, where I couldn't even share these videos. I couldn't even come up, because I was just doing this inner intensive. It was like an inner intensive training. It was super fast. So right now, I want to talk also about the third aspect of the word renegade, which is our own self. We also have a renegade aspect, which is, in many cases, we call it the ego. The ego, people would say, I don't have the ego because I'm following the spiritual path. Also because most people in the spiritual circles right now, again, when I'm saying most, I don't give numbers. I don't know the numbers, but I'm looking at I'm feeling the essence of it, and what I'm shown and what I feel and the experiences I have with people. Is a lot of people have been so eager to pursue this high spiritual knowledge, they've lost the sense of doing this inner healing work. And there's a lot of people who haven't even begun doing the healing work. There's a lot of people who are saying they're doing it, but they're not doing the most crucial part, which is, it's easy to recognize the darkness that exists on the outside. It's not so easy to see venues of darkness when they influence us from within. These projections, family patterns, the moment we start projecting onto another, making it about them, we should stop and say, whoa, what's the true story behind this? I still see when I communicate with people, it's very easy for them to digest something that's collective. Oh yes, this is coming up, this is happening. But when it comes to them, the ego will immediately have the defensive mode on, because the pattern is naturally, like it's created in a way that it defends itself. That's why it's difficult for people to do the actual work that's of most importance, because you can't do any high up spiritual work if you haven't even done the building work, right? Laying of the foundation. That's why I've been doing this in this triggering and through relationship. I've been doing this work through our conscious relating experience with my mother. We've been going really deep, and at a certain point it just ended for us. was like, oh my God, like, because we've done it. This was done. This was sealed. And then this higher work that I was doing came afterwards. It has to, Spirit has its organic spiral, the way work is performed through us. Otherwise, just a bunch of nonsense and a bunch of words. And I've talked about how words are easily to be used. And so many people still fall for words. Oh, you've written it in a way that, you know, it makes me feel like this and that. Just go beyond the words. Please, my beloveds, don't stop there, because it literally will stop you. It will isolate you. You will feel separate from the rest, and you will become your own victim. You will become imprisoned in the prison of your own making. And you won't be able to see clearly anymore at all. So this work is a preliminary cause for us to do that, and then pursuing this higher spiritual work. I know a lot of people who join my Patreon page, they're very interested and tempted to see what's this higher spiritual work, but many of them have not even begun to do the levels of importance that would help to integrate all that in. So people are kind of so fascinated about what Spirit can be and do and all of that. But we've been trying to liberate the body, which is a process. And those people who've been regulars with me, they've been going through month per month. That's a whole different thing if someone shows up for 1 week and then goes off. It's just like peeping Tom, boop, goes back. Again, it's not a judgment. It's just how life is. These things take so much work and dedication. And I know, because I've been there and I still am, and I always will be. It's never going to end. I don't see this as ending. So if you put yourself in a position, you know, I've done this work, now I can channel, and that's it. Still, you remain limited, right? You're going to be doing this work, never pursuing what if there's more to liberate? What if there's more you're not seeing? What if, you know, what's truly coming through you as a channel? You know, this work is so responsible, but so little of that responsibility is being held. So this inner rebel and the inner renegade is the aspect that isolates itself. It doesn't want to be part of the community of others. And at the same time, there's a longing within the inner child that it does. But because there's still projection, it's like acting as an interface between the two, and it never allows the spirit to fully interact with the physical self, with the inner child, with the human self, and making that integration. And I've noticed this because of these obstructions I had to move through, that it was very difficult for me to be at the same time my strong spirit and my beautiful birthed child creation. And I had to really do that last step, and I'm going to reveal that in the transmission for this month. But it's been really intense. And this is the kind of work that hasn't been done before. And we did the meditation with beloved Master Jesus, and today he actually said, today I want to thank you. I'm the one who should be thanking you, because you women are the pillars of creation. You're the pillars of life. That's what he said. It was beautiful, and it's true. And that is why you won't see as many women, because they're going to be like flooded with shut it down, you know, still. And then I see these titles on YouTube saying, game over, we've done it, complete. Look at our planet. There's still chemtrails. They're still doing immense violation, you know, talking about vaccines, all these things. Just go and watch the videos that are actually telling you the truth. It's not all the politics. That's a very minimum stage of what's actually taking place. You know, this is a consciousness agenda and a position in war. And it's just been the first step. It's just been to test people how far, where they are. It's kind of been a test probe, right? Let's see where they are, how far they'll be willing to go at these expenses. And we're going to present much more when that comes. And that's why I recommend you Susan's work and her channeling and her recent Arcturian message and all of that, because I've been receiving very much the same information. We're always very aligned. But she presented it beautifully. So I'm more focused on this life force liberation work. That's more my work. And like I said, I'm not so much a healer or channeler, but I receive directly. So what I receive, I always put out in the way that's, like I said, it's organic. It doesn't need a structure. It doesn't need a workshop or, I don't know. It's just me receiving, feeling the impulse of life, and seeing where the difficulties are, where the obstructions still are, and they're sharing them. And when people are not willing to accept that, they're always going to criticize you. That's why there's this thing when they say, don't shoot the messenger, because it's not us. It's like we're trying to show people the bigger perspective, and don't get yourself too excited too fast too soon. So I'm still wanting to bring that divine immunity and the truth about artificial intelligence video, which would be a part of my 3 course program, which is free on YouTube. There's just 3 courses. One is about illumined cognition, and it's the mastery of seership. The second one we had just quite recently, which was about training within darkness. And then the third one would be about that, and what's the way towards really reaching that divine immunity. There's a lot of information, so I'm in the middle of moving as well, and getting lots of things I need to prepare. So I don't know, but I'm really hoping to do that as soon as I can, because time is speeding up fast and we need that information. And because my YouTube channel has been hijacked too, just like the rest of the things, as you can see, sometimes people with less views have more to say. That's where we're being suppressed. And again, this is not about competition at all. This is just us and the family of light wanting to bring the truth for people to wake up more, not just staying comfortable in the awakening they think they have now. You don't own your awakening. It's an infinite pursuit. And if you get lazy, you all get slapped in the butt. It happens to me too. It happens to all of us. That always means more work to be done, and more life force of true, powerful nature of spirit to be liberated. So no game over yet, my beloveds. It's just beginning. We are in a short time frame, or a period of time, to make the adjustments. Like I'm saying, roll up your sleeves. If you're guided to be a specific location, or do the kind of work of preparation, or now they're giving people some time to meet with people again and to travel. But you don't know what's coming next. We don't know. We might say, we might assume, but definitely game isn't over yet, because as you can see, the darkness still has a tight grip. It won't leave until probably the last moment. Like all things, I always see this in my own life. At the very last moment, a breakthrough happens. So at the collective level, it's kind of happening in the same way. So people are actually determining how bad they're allowing this to go, because if they're not willing to get really educated what's happening and willing to physically contribute, meditation is great, especially collective meditations. But if you are not doing your physical work as well, complying only with what's the truth, then we're still not actually following through the embodiment that we're here to deliver, all participating in the deliverance of the mother and her beautiful divine plan. So those of you who are on Patreon, I will see you there. Those of you who are not, maybe one day, or those of you who never will be, which is what never say never. I love you always. And just really always be within yourself and ask yourself. You have to be willing to call out each ego aspect of you, because it is a renegade. That aspect which isolates or says, I'm going to leave this because it's too, it's challenging me with too much. Well, at the same time, things which come easy are not always the best, okay? Things that feel, it resonates because, it's my same knowing. Your knowing is always just within the light, and it just simply complies with you. For me, resonance means resonance in this moment, and then there's a resonance within truth. There's 2 different things, okay? Beloveds, remember that. And the truth will sometimes require a more feisty aspect of you, a more fierce one. It will ask you to step beyond just the comfort zone, so it won't always be the easier aspect. I've had to learn to travel against the current all my life. Thank you, trees. Putting raindrops on me or something. So baptizing us as we're doing the video. It's not always the easy, the light-sounding things that have what we need in this moment. This moment requires from us to know all agendas, to know all pathways, to understand both the light and the dark, and to know that more is coming. So I'm hoping to bring that training in through soon. And when you meet people like that who are renegades, who are self-serving individuals, you have to be careful, okay? Because a lot of these people come in and they want to steal off the work of people who really are serving selflessly. I knew this specific person once, and we met somewhere, like many times, even afterwards, when there was already separation, because the person was very, they weren't very nice. And I was saying something about the place where we met, and they said to me, I don't care. I just want it to be beautiful. I want to enjoy. I want to have a nice time. I want to have fun. I was thinking, okay, so why are you wanting to be a spiritual teacher? It's like there's no depth. The person literally said, I'm just here to have fun. And there's many people who just want to live their best lives and not within the the bigger framework, like all is one. If you have even an inch of understanding creation and that all is connected, you will know that even though you're just self-serving and all you want to do is take care of you and your needs, even though you will always be influenced either sooner or later. And that's why selflessly serving orientation of life, not in a fanatic way, but just really spiritually realistic, grounded, firm way, is like, it's like a distance run, right? It's not like that short, fast, speedy run, but it's like running long distances. But it does bring rewards that are honoring, that are your spiritual growth, that is, once you attain it, it's never lost. It sometimes requires more due diligence, more work, more dedication, but it is so deeply rewarding, I tell you that, because no one will take away the level of your, not just energetic mastery. Anyone can learn how to master energetic alchemy, right? It's very important. But mastering the art of creation, imagine that, like the purest form of how creation is truly designed. And this is what I want to teach in the future coming times, like the pure nature of life force and how it creates, and what the truth of the Divine Mother is when she's creating life, and us to become liberated through those principles. And these are these seals that I've been receiving and I'm going to be talking about on Patreon. And it's really a beautiful thing. Amidst all this chaos and dirt and darkness, there's beautiful things being birthed. I know I'm birthing them myself, and I'm sure many of you as well, following the pursuit of your spiritual illumination path. So, my sweet beloveds, I bid you farewell for now, and with all my heart and loving intention for all of us as one light family to understand that we're here working together. If there's any sense of competition, it's out. Those of you who've already read the book Sanat Kumara by Janet McLaurin, it was this beautiful example that he shared as his channeling when he first ascended. Then he started working with this group, and if he wanted to kind of like be ahead of the group, it always kind of pulled him back, because he had to learn to create energetically within the group. They needed to be as one, and if he wanted to be like pulling it forward like by himself, more training. And that's why many starseeds have ended here to not have ended, but have come here to learn this as well, because this is truly now, especially at these times, time where even if you're the most remote hermit somewhere, but you're still functioning as a group unit. You don't just think of yourself. You're not like excluded from the rest of the cosmos. It's not about being alone or physically with others. It's about knowing how to be within the presence of a group and serving as one light family. And these are the distinct traits of the family of light, and especially the 144 light beings. And they're not traits of renegades. And there are many, and I've met many. I've met several on their path. They came across, they got really super excited about me and my path at the first few steps. And then they got super triggered, because they weren't knowing how to be as one with the other. They wanted to, by all the force and all the means, wanted to be alone, and they were fixated on this, and you know, it's like this strong ego. You can't only have will. You need to have love, wisdom, and power. These three need to be a trinity. Everything has to be a trinity in order for it to truly be created within the immaculate nature of life. And this is how you become the member of light, family of light, and doing their work. No matter where you're sent, it doesn't matter. All systems are interconnected, whether you're on Earth or another, station or a spaceship. It doesn't matter, right? It's about trusting this plan and knowing that the greater group consciousness is navigating this journey. And we all have aspects when we question these narratives and we think, what if we're not a part of something greater? And this is again this ego and the doubt, right? The whispers of the doubt that wants us to think we're alone, but we're not. And it's a challenge in this world to not be so self-centered and oriented and think about the whole than just yourself. As you can see, I'm in the middle of a difficult life situation at this time, and I'm still trying to get the content out and everything, just that people would get, what's truly important at this time. And there's many people who come to me and they would say, oh, you're one of the purest channels that I've ever listened to, or this, but these people never made one conscious contribution to my work, not even 5 cents. It's not about the money, it's about the principle. of understanding this conscious energy exchange and, you know, doing the lip service, you know, to something you're saying. And it is important, not just the example I mentioned, but in all of our life. We say, oh, that resonates with us. Yes, but are we making a conscious connection to also ourselves build within that resonance? Or are we just remaining within resonance indefinitely? This is very important because this builds the world. Actions do. Okay? So that's it. Again, as always, with so much love is empower. Me and the water and the ants and the sand and the leaves and the trees and everything is greeting you all. And I don't know when I'll see you next. Hope it to be soon, as always. So many blessings. Bye for now. Bye.